My name is Theodore Pletcher. I'm 67 years old, and 3 years after I buried my wife, I found out my own kids had already buried me too. It was the last warm night of September when I stepped onto the porch to grab her old coat, and I heard my son and my daughter out in the dark, calmly deciding who'd carve up my 200 acres once he's gone. They talked about the land by the road, the pasture with the creek. Then they called my youngest boy, the one who works this farm at dawn every single day, just the hired help. I didn't storm out. My legs wouldn't let me. But the next morning, I picked up the phone and called someone my kids never expected, and by the time I hung up, the future they'd sketched out in the dark was already coming apart. Not with a fight, not with revenge, with one quiet decision they never saw me make. Before I take you back to that porch, please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Now let me take you back to that last warm night, the night everything I believed about my family cracked open. The screen door didn't creak the way it should have. I'd oiled the hinge that morning, and for once, it swung silent. That's the only reason they didn't hear me. Ruth's coat still hung on the porch hook where she left it. 3 years and I couldn't move it. I reached for it out of habit, the way you reach for a light switch in a house you've sold. That's when I heard Marcus. He's slowing down. You've seen it. Danielle's voice came back low. So we should be ready. That's all I'm saying. I froze with my hand on the wool. Through the window I could see the backs of their heads. 2 grown children I'd carried on my shoulders, sitting in Ruth's wicker chairs like they owned the porch already. The frontage by the road is worth the most, Danielle said. That parcel goes fast to a developer. The creek land I'd keep, or split. And Caleb? Marcus asked. Caleb's just the hired help, Marcus. He gets a share for the labor. He doesn't get a vote. The hired help. My son. The boy who pulled a breech calf at 2 a.m. last spring, arm bloody to the shoulder, grinning when it lived. He's not going to last long anyway, Danielle said. She meant me. We should have the paperwork sorted before it gets messy. I didn't feel angry yet. Anger takes energy. I just felt cold, the kind of cold that starts behind your ribs and spreads outward until your fingers go numb. My hand found the door handle. I could open it. I could walk out and let them see my face and watch them scramble. I could. Instead, I pulled my hand back 1 finger at a time and stepped into the dark of the kitchen where they couldn't see me. I needed to think, and I hadn't needed to think in a very long time. I stood in the dark kitchen and listened to my own breathing. Out on the porch, they'd moved on to easier things. The weather, someone's kid, a restaurant in the city. Like they hadn't just measured my grave with a tape measure and priced it by the acre. I lowered myself into a chair at the table Ruth and I bought the year we married. 43 years of elbows had worn the finish pale in 2 spots. I put my hands where hers used to go. Here's the thing that shamed me most. They weren't wrong to think I'd slowed down. After Ruth died, I stopped doing anything that felt like the future. The will she begged me to update sat in a drawer untouched, still written the way we'd drawn it up when the kids were small. Everything split 3 ways, equal clean. Equal. I used to think that word was the same as fair. But I did the math sitting there in the dark. If I died tomorrow, the will divided everything 3 ways. Marcus and Danielle would hold 2 votes to Caleb's 1. They'd force a sale. The land my grandfather cleared by hand would become a cul-de-sac with a clever name. And the will would let them do it. My will. My silence had built them the door they were already walking through. I'd spent 3 years telling myself I'd deal with it later. Later had a way of arriving without knocking. I looked at the drawer across the kitchen where that will still sat. For the first time since the funeral, I didn't want to go to bed and disappear. I wanted morning to come. You have to understand what that dirt meant, or none of the rest makes sense. My grandfather cleared the first 40 acres with a mule and a chain. My father added the rest over 30 years of not spending money he didn't have. 200 acres now. Corn, hay, a cattle herd that knows my truck by the sound of the engine. To Marcus and Danielle, it was acreage, a number with commas in it. To me, it was every morning I ever loved. Ruth and I got married under the big oak at the far edge of the north field. She wore her mother's dress and stood ankle-deep in clover and the preacher had to shout over the wind. We came back to that tree every anniversary, 42 of them. She's up on the hill now. I picked the spot myself, where you can see the whole spread and the oak stands against the sky. I go up there more than I tell anyone. The land wasn't an asset. It was a marriage. It was her. And my kids had sat on her porch in her chairs and talked about selling the ground she's buried in to a man who'd bulldozed the oak for a stormwater pond. I sat at the table until the porch went quiet and I heard 2 cars pull out of the drive, gravel popping under the tires. Then I got up and did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went to the drawer and I took out the will, and I read every word of it standing under the kitchen light. By the time I finished, I knew it wasn't a will anymore. It was a loaded gun, and I had left it pointed at the one child who never asked for anything. Caleb was already in the barn when I walked out at 5 the next morning. He didn't hear me. He was crouched by a heifer that had gone off her feed, running a hand down her flank, talking to her in that low voice he uses on animals and never on people. He's 33. He was going to be an engineer. Had the acceptance letter framed and everything the year his mother got sick. He came home for the summer and never left. Never once mentioned the letter again. I took it down off the wall after a while because I couldn't stand looking at it. He fixed the fence on the west line last week without being asked. He was up 3 nights running through calving season, and I found him asleep in the truck cab at dawn with a newborn calf wrapped in his coat on the passenger seat. He's never asked me for a raise. He's never asked me what happens to this place when I'm gone. Not once. His brother and sister sat on my porch and called him the hired help. He straightened up when he finally saw me. "Morning, Dad. She's just sulking. She'll come around." I looked at my youngest boy, standing in the half-dark with straw in his hair, and I felt the cold in my chest turn into something with an edge. "Caleb," I said, "you ever think about what you'd do with this place someday?" He shrugged, embarrassed. "Never really thought past today's chores." That was the whole answer right there. The 2 who wanted it hadn't lifted a finger. The one who'd earned it didn't even know he was in a race. He had no idea what his brother and sister had already decided about him. And I wasn't ready to tell him. Not yet. Marcus and Danielle stayed the weekend. That in itself was strange. They usually breezed in for a holiday and left before the pie was cold. Sunday morning, Danielle made breakfast. She never makes breakfast. She set a plate in front of me and squeezed my shoulder like I was fragile. "You look tired, Dad. You're doing too much." "I feel fine," I said. Marcus poured my coffee. "You shouldn't be worrying about the books at your age. Let us take some of that off your plate. The paperwork, the taxes, all of it." "That's a lot of trouble for you." "It's no trouble," he smiled. "That's what family's for." Danielle slid into the chair beside me. "I've got a friend in real estate, sharp guy. He does free assessments just so people know what they're sitting on. No pressure. Might be fun to know the number." I lifted my coffee so my face had something to do. "Fun," I said. "Just knowing," she said. "Information's power, Dad." They watched me the way you watch a slot machine you've already put money in. I set the cup down and gave them the thing they wanted. A slow nod. A tired old man agreeing to be handled. "Maybe you're right," I said. "Maybe I have been carrying too much alone." Danielle beamed. Marcus relaxed into his chair. They thought they'd cracked me open. "We just want what's best for you, Dad," she said. I looked at my daughter, at that bright, practiced smile, and I understood something I should have understood on the porch. "I know exactly what you want," I said. She laughed like it was a joke. I let her think it was. But I'd already decided. I just needed to figure out how to do it right. That afternoon, after their cars pulled out, I went looking for Ruth's things. Not to grieve, to search. She kept everything. Receipts, cards, the little notebook where she wrote down the names of everyone who brought a casserole to a funeral, so she could return the dish. In her wallet, still in the nightstand drawer, I found a business card gone soft at the corners. Ellen Vance, attorney, estate and trust law. A small firm on Main Street above the pharmacy. I remembered her now. She and Ruth were in the same book club for 20 years. Ellen came to the funeral and held my hand a beat too long and said, When you're ready, Theo, come see me. Ruth asked me to look out for you. I'd nodded and forgotten it inside a week. I turned the card over. On the back, in Ruth's handwriting, small and certain, "Get it done, Theo. For all three of them, fairly." For all three of them, fairly. Ruth had seen this coming. Of course she had. She read our children better than I ever did. She'd handed me the answer 3 years ago, and I'd let it go soft in a drawer along with everything else. I sat on the edge of our bed and held that card for a long time. Fair. There was that word again. But Ruth didn't write equal. She wrote fairly. She knew the difference even then. I put the card in my shirt pocket over my heart, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not grief, not rage. A plan starting to move. The question wasn't whether I'd call Ellen Vance. It was how much I'd have to hide before I could. The reason came into focus 2 days later, and it wasn't pretty. Marcus had left his jacket over the back of a kitchen chair. He does that, comes, drops things, leaves them for someone else to notice. A folded letter stuck out of the inside pocket. I'm not proud of what I did next. I read it. It was from a lender. Second notice. A number at the bottom with a lot of zeros, and words like default, and remaining balance, and immediate. Then the phone rang in the other room, and it was Marcus, and I stood very still and listened through the doorway. I know, he said. I know the timeline. I'm working on it. A pause. There's an asset coming. Land. It's just tied up right now. Give me till spring. An asset coming. Land. He was talking about my farm to a man he owed money to. He was talking about the ground under my feet like it was already collateral, like all he had to do was wait for me to stop breathing. I sat back down at Ruth's table. I wasn't angry exactly. I was almost relieved. For 3 days I'd been telling myself maybe I'd misheard on the porch. Maybe I was a bitter old man, reading cruelty into a private talk. Now I knew. Marcus wasn't dreaming about my land. He was counting on it. He'd already spent it in his head to cover a hole he'd dug himself. That was Marcus, drowning and reaching for the one thing that would pull my whole family under with him. But there were 2 of them on that porch. And I still didn't know what my daughter was really after. That night I climbed the hill. I do it slower than I used to. The path's the same one I've walked 10,000 times, but my knees keep a different clock now. I got to the top as the light was going purple over the far tree line. Ruth's stone is granite, plain the way she wanted. I sat down in the grass beside it, the way I used to sit beside her on the couch. I'm sorry, I said out loud. Nobody around to hear but the cattle. I let it all go soft. The will, the card. You told me to get it done, and I hid instead. The wind moved through the oak down in the north field. They're going to sell it, Ruth. Marcus is in trouble, and Danielle's helping him dress it up as fair. And Caleb doesn't even know he's in the room while they auction him off. I pulled her card out of my pocket and read her handwriting again in the last of the light. For all 3 of them. Fairly. Not equal. Fair. She trusted me to know the difference. For 3 years I'd let her down on that. Not anymore. I'm going to do it right, I told her. Not to punish them. To finish what you asked. All 3 of them get something real. But nobody sells this hill. Nobody. I sat until the stars came out. Then I walked down in the dark, without a flashlight, because my feet know that ground better than my eyes ever will. I called Ellen Vance's office from the kitchen and left a message on the machine. Then I went to bed, and for the first time in 3 years, I slept the whole night through. Ellen Vance's office smelled like old paper and good coffee. She was older than I remembered, silver-haired with reading glasses on a chain, and a handshake like a farmer's. Theodore Pletcher, she said. Ruth said you'd come eventually. She didn't say it'd take 3 years. I'm slow, I said. Ask my kids. She didn't smile at that. She just pointed me to a chair and asked me to tell her everything. So I did. The porch, the breakfast, the letter in Marcus's jacket, all of it. When I finished, she took her glasses off. Let me tell you something people don't like to hear, she said. Fair and equal aren't the same word. My wife wrote that on the back of your card. Ruth was smarter than both of us. She pulled a legal pad toward her. Here's the problem, Theo. Farmland's worth more than it's ever been. Split 3 ways in a plain will, your estate crosses tax lines you don't want to cross. Worse, a 3-way split with 2 kids who want cash and 1 who wants to farm, that land gets sold. Every time. The math forces it. So what's the answer? The answer, she said, is that you decide. While you're alive and clear-headed. There are legal ways to keep the ground whole for the one who works it and still take care of the others. Real ways. Nothing sneaky. Everything on the table. They'll say I'm disinheriting them. She leaned back. You're not disinheriting anyone, Theo. You're finally deciding. There's a difference. And by the time we're done, everyone in that room will know it. I felt the plan take on weight, become a real thing with corners. How long? I asked. A few weeks, if you can keep quiet that long. That, it turned out, was the hard part. Keeping quiet on a farm is easy. Keeping quiet from your own children is not. Danielle started calling more. Every couple of days now, always with a reason that wasn't the real reason. Was I eating? Had I thought any more about her friend's assessment? Did I need help with anything? Anything at all? I'm fine, sweetheart, I'd say, and hear her disappointment hum down the line. Marcus texted. Marcus never texts. Just checking in, Dad. Love you. I stared at that word love and thought about the letter in his jacket, and I didn't know how to feel. The worst part was Caleb. He knew something was off. He'd catch me staring across the north field and ask if I was okay, and I'd have to lie to the one person who'd never lied to me. I drove into town twice more to sign papers. Both times I took the long way, the county road nobody uses, in case one of them was watching. 67 years old and sneaking around my own township like a teenager. One evening, Danielle called while I was at Ellen's parking lot, engine running. Where are you, Dad? Sounds like you're in the car. Just running to the feed store, I said. On a Thursday night. They stay open late now. A pause. A long one. Okay, she said in a voice that wasn't okay at all. Take care of yourself. I hung up and sat there with my heart going harder than the chores ever made it go. She was starting to wonder. I could hear it. And a person like Danielle, once she starts wondering, doesn't stop until she goes looking. She came out the next Saturday with a folder. She spread it on Ruth's kitchen table like she was dealing cards. A survey map of the farm, our 200 acres in clean black lines, and drawn over it in red pen, lot divisions. Neat rectangles with numbers in them. Don't be upset, she said before I'd said anything. This is just for reference, so we're not scrambling later. I looked at the red lines cutting through the north field. One of them ran right through the oak. You drew this, I said. I had my guy sketch it. Look, the road frontage here becomes 8 residential lots. That alone clears more than the whole rest combined. The creek section we keep as is, or we sell to the county for a park. Everybody wins. And the hill. She hesitated just a flicker. The hill's harder, but Dad, at some point, sentiment costs money. Sentiment. She meant her mother's grave. You've put a lot of work into this, I said quietly. Somebody has to. Her voice cracked, and for a second the mask slipped, and something real showed underneath. Fear, raw and cornered. I gave up everything for this family, Dad. The divorce took the house. I'm starting over at 38 with nothing. I don't want us fighting over this later. I'm trying to prevent a war. And there it was. Not simple greed. Something worse, because I understood it. She was scared, and she'd convinced herself that carving up my land was mercy. I appreciate you thinking ahead, I said. I closed the folder gently and slid it back to her. Leave that with me. I want to study it. She didn't want to. I could see that. But she left it. The oak on that map had a red line through its heart. So did I. Caleb found me that evening on the porch, holding the folder I hadn't opened again. Marcus and Danielle sure are around a lot lately, he said, easing into the chair beside me. Ruth's chair. He's the only one who ever sits in it like it's an honor instead of a right. They are. Everything okay, Dad? You've been quiet, quieter than usual, and that's saying something. I almost told him. God, I wanted to. He'd been carrying this farm on his back for 11 years without knowing there were people waiting to sell it out from under him. He deserved to know. But if I told Caleb, he'd confront them. He's honest to a fault, no poker face at all. And the whole thing depended on Marcus and Danielle believing I was still the tired old man who'd roll over and split it 3 ways. So I lied to my honest boy one more time. Just thinking about your mother, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. This time of year. His face softened. Yeah, me too. He looked out at the field going gold in the last light. You know she's why I stayed, right? Not the acceptance letter I didn't use. Her. And then it was just you. Somebody had to be here. I had to look away so he wouldn't see my face. You ever regret it? I asked. The engineering? The life you'd have had? He thought about it, honest as always. Nope. This is the life I'd have picked anyway. I just didn't know it till I got stuck in it. Stuck in it. My whole plan sitting right there in that word, and he didn't even know he'd said it. I couldn't tell him yet, but I could feel the day coming when I'd have to. Helen laid the whole thing out at our next meeting, and it was cleaner than I expected. A trust, she said. The land and the operation go into it. Caleb runs it and inherits it with terms that keep it from being sold off. It stays a working farm. That's protected. And the other 2? They'll scream, I left them nothing. But you didn't. She pulled a second file. This is where it gets fair instead of equal. You've got the life insurance policy Ruth made you buy back in '98. She was always the practical one. It's grown. Add the retirement accounts, the equipment values, the savings, split between Marcus and Danielle. That's a real inheritance. 6 figures each, liquid, cash they can actually use. I sat with that. So they get money. Caleb gets the ground. Each child gets what fits them. Marcus can clear his debt. Danielle can put a down payment on a fresh start. And nobody bulldozes your wife's hill. She took her glasses off. That's not revenge, Theo. That's a father doing his job 3 years late. The insurance policy. Ruth had nagged me into that thing when the kids were toddlers. I'd resented every premium. Now it was going to be the very thing that let me be fair without being foolish. When do we tell them? I asked. Ellen tapped her pen. That's your call. You could do a quiet letter in the mail after it's signed. Clean. No, I said, and I surprised myself with how fast it came. No letters after the fact. I'm not going to hide from my own children the way I've been hiding for 3 years. I'll tell them to their faces, all of them, together, in my house. Ellen studied me a moment, then nodded slowly. A family meeting, she said. All right, then let's make sure it's done exactly right. Let me step off the porch for just a second and talk to you directly. If you've ever sat across from people who love you and realized they'd already decided your worth without asking, you know the particular quiet that fills a room. I'd like to know, has someone in your family ever made a decision about your life while you were standing right there? Tell me below. And if this story's holding you, hit subscribe, because that family meeting is coming, and you're going to want to be in the room. Now back to it. Marcus came out alone that week, and he brought a pen. He waited until after supper, when the light was low and I was tired, and he slid a document across the table like it was nothing. Just a power of attorney, Dad, so I can handle the boring stuff for you. Bank runs, tax filings, that kind of thing. Take the load off. I looked at it without picking it up. Legal language, dents my name, typed at the bottom over a blank line. That's a lot of authority for bank runs, I said. It's standard. Everybody our age sets one up. He caught the word and winced. I mean, it's just smart planning, so nothing's a scramble if you get sick. If I got sick. If I stopped being able to say no. I understood exactly what this was. With this signed, Marcus could move money signed for me, act as me. The debt with all those zeros could reach right into my accounts, and the land wouldn't be far behind. He'd stopped waiting for spring. He was reaching now. I'll sign what I understand, I said, and I don't understand this yet. His jaw tightened. Dad, come on, it's me. Then you won't mind if a slow old man reads it slowly. I set it aside face down and asked him if he wanted pie. The muscle in his cheek jumped, but he let it go. He had to. Pushing harder would have shown his hand. He left the document on the table when he went to bed, still waiting for my signature. In the morning, it was gone. He'd taken it back to try again another day. He had no idea I already had a pen of my own and papers he'd never see coming. The beauty of being underestimated is that nobody watches you closely. For weeks, I'd been the tired old man who took the long way to the feed store, who needed things explained twice, who couldn't be trusted to handle his own paperwork. They built that picture of me themselves, brick by brick, and now it was a wall I could work behind. Marcus tried the power of attorney twice more, once by phone. "Did you get a chance to look at that, Dad?" And once in person, sliding it across the same table like maybe I'd forgotten refusing it. Both times I did the same thing. I got confused. I got tired. I needed to read it again. I asked whether we shouldn't wait until his sister could look it over too, knowing full well that would stall him for weeks because the last thing Marcus wanted was Danielle reading his paperwork. "You don't need to make this complicated," he said, frustration finally showing. "I'm old Marcus. Complicated is all I've got left." He laughed because he thought it was a joke about my age. It wasn't. It was the truest thing I'd said to him in a month. Every day I stalled was a day closer to the trust being signed and notarized. Ellen called it running out the clock, like a coach. I called it the only game I'd ever played where being slow was the winning move. They thought my dullness was decline. It was cover. And behind that cover, in a lawyer's office, above the pharmacy on Main Street, the whole future of this farm was quietly changing hands. Theirs to Caleb's, and neither of them suspected a thing. Until Danielle found the card. She found it while tidying up, which is what Danielle calls going through other people's things. I walked in from the barn and she was standing in the kitchen holding Ellen Vance's business card between two fingers, like something she'd pulled out of a drain. "Dad," she said, "why do you have an estate lawyer's card?" My heart went sideways. But my face I'd been practicing for weeks. "Whose is that?" I said, squinting at it like I couldn't read it from 6 feet. "Ellen Vance, Estate and Trust Law." She turned it over. My stomach dropped. Ruth's handwriting was on the back, but Danielle read it out loud without understanding what she was holding. "Get it done, Theo, for all three of them. Fairly." She looked up. "Whose writing is this?" "Your mother's," I said, and that at least was pure truth, and it landed like truth. She went still. "Mom wrote this. She gave me that card before she passed, told me to sort things out properly. I let my voice waver, and I didn't have to fake much. I've been putting it off. 3 years. I finally figured it was time to do what she asked." Danielle's face moved through 3 things at once. Suspicion, then grief at her mother's handwriting, and I watched this land relief. Because in her mind, sorting things out properly meant a clean, updated 3-way split. She talked herself into it before I finished the sentence. "That's good, Dad," she said softly, and set the card down. "That's really good. We should all sit down and go through it together." "We should," I agreed. "Soon." She left thinking she'd caught me being responsible. She'd actually caught me 3 weeks from the end. For a few days after that, Danielle relaxed, and her relaxing told me everything. She stopped calling every other day, stopped hinting about the assessment. In her mind, the outcome was settled. Dad was finally updating the will. It'd be equal like always, and then they could get on with the business of waiting. Her confidence was the safest thing I had. As long as she and Marcus believed the ending was theirs, they wouldn't look too hard at how I was writing it. She did test me once, though. We were doing dishes and she said, casual as weather, "So this lawyer, she's just cleaning up the old will, right? Keeping it simple." I dried a plate slow. "Your mother wanted things done right," I said. "I'm finally doing it right." "Right meaning fair," Danielle said. "Equal." I set the plate in the cabinet. "Fair," I said, "is a word people use when they mean my share." She laughed uncertain, not sure if I'd made a joke or a point. I let her decide. It was a joke. She wanted it to be. You're getting philosophical in your old age, she said. Comes with the knees going. She smiled and went back to the dishes, and the danger passed, because arrogance is the easiest thing in the world to hide a plan behind. They were so sure they knew how this ended that they never once considered they might be wrong. That's the thing about people who've already decided you don't matter. They stop paying attention to you. And a man nobody's paying attention to can get an awful lot done. Ellen called that night. The papers were ready. All they needed was a data room and everyone in it. I signed the trust on a Tuesday morning in Ellen's office, with a notary watching and a pen that felt heavier than it had any right to. When it was done, Ellen gathered the pages into a folder and set it in front of me. That's it, she said. The land's protected. Caleb inherits a working farm that can't be carved up and sold. Marcus and Danielle each get a real liquid inheritance. It's fair, it's legal, it's final. Final. I'd waited 3 years to feel that word, and now that I had it, it felt less like a victory and more like setting down something heavy I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it hurt. Now the meeting, I said. Ellen nodded. You sure you want to do it in person? You could let me mail them each a letter. Cleaner, safer. No, I've been sure about this from the start. They planned my whole future behind my back on a porch in the dark. I'm not going to answer them with a letter in the mail. I'm going to look all 3 of my children in the eye and tell them the truth in the light. Together, in the house their mother and I built. Then I'll be there, Ellen said. Not to threaten anyone, to explain. When people hear the law spelled out plain by a neutral party, they argue less. It's harder to call your father a villain when there's a lawyer at the table saying every word of this is legal and every word of it is fair. I like that. A witness, not a weapon. We set the date, 2 weeks out. I'd tell all 3 of them it was an important family meeting and leave it at that. Marcus and Danielle would come thinking they were there to collect. They had no idea what they were coming to learn. I made the calls on a Sunday. I want everyone home 2 weeks from Saturday, I told each of them. Something important about the farm in the future, all 3 of you, in person. Marcus's voice went bright and greedy in a way he thought he was hiding. Of course, Dad. Absolutely. Whatever you need. I could hear him already spending it. Danielle was cooler, but I heard the same thing underneath. Finally, she said. Yes, we'll be there. This is the responsible thing, Dad. I'm proud of you. Proud of me. For handing them what they'd already claimed. Caleb just said, Sure, Dad. Everything okay? And when I said it was, he let it go, because he's the only one who never needed to know the ending before he agreed to show up. The 2 weeks crawled. Marcus texted twice, chipper, checking the time. Danielle sent a grocery list, so nobody has to cook. She was setting the table for her own coronation. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I went up the hill in the dark, feet finding the path on their own, and I sat by Ruth's stone. Tomorrow, I told her, all 3 of them in the front room. I'm doing what you asked, for all 3 of them, fairly. The wind moved in the oak. I chose to believe that meant something. I came down and laid out my good shirt on the chair by the bed, the way Ruth used to lay out mine for church. Marcus and Danielle thought they were coming to collect what was theirs. They had no idea they were coming to learn who I really was. They came at noon. Marcus wore a blazer, like a man arriving at a closing. Danielle brought a legal pad and that red pen folder, set it on the coffee table, where everyone could see she'd come prepared. Caleb came straight from the barn in clean work clothes, confused and a little scared, because family meetings in our house usually meant funerals. I'd set out coffee, Ruth's good cups. The front room looked the way it did on Christmas. Sit, I said, all of you. Marcus and Danielle traded a look, the look of 2 people who think they're about to win. Caleb sat on the edge of the couch like he might have to run. Before we start, I said, there's someone joining us. I opened the front door. Ellen Vance stepped in, briefcase in hand, silver hair, neat glasses on their chain. She nodded politely to the room and set her case on the table. Marcus's face drained. He knew that face. He'd seen it on a business card he didn't know his father had. Danielle stood halfway up. What is she doing here? Miss Vance is my estate attorney, I said, calm as I could make it. She's here to explain some decisions I've made. Sit down, sweetheart, please. Danielle sat slowly, the color going out of her cheeks. The red pen folder sat forgotten in her lap. Caleb looked between us, all lost. Dad, what's going on? You'll see in a minute, son. Ellen opened her briefcase and drew out a folder twice as thick as Danielle's. She laid it on the table with a soft, final weight. Mr. Pletcher has asked me to walk you through his estate plan, she said in a voice as level as a spared bubble. Everything I'm about to explain is signed, notarized, and legally binding. The room went so quiet I could hear the clock Ruth wound every Sunday. Ellen laid it out plain, no drama, which somehow made it land harder. The farm, all 200 acres, the operation, the equipment, the herd has been placed in a trust. Caleb Pletcher is the successor and beneficiary. The terms keep the land intact as a working farm. It cannot be subdivided or sold off. Caleb's head came up. What? Ellen went on. Marcus and Danielle are each provided for separately. The life insurance proceeds, the retirement accounts, the savings, and the equipment's cash value are divided between the two of you. In liquid terms, that's a substantial inheritance for each. Funds you can use immediately. Nobody moved. Then Danielle laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. That's not equal. He gets the whole farm. We get, what, a check? You each get a real inheritance, Ellen said. It's not equal. It's structured to be fair to all three and to keep the farm operating. Those aren't the same thing. Marcus had gone very still. He wasn't looking at Ellen. He was looking at me, and I watched the arithmetic collapse behind his eyes. The debt, the lender, the asset. Coming in spring that wasn't coming. Now, not like that. Not ever. You can't do this, he said quiet. It's done, I said. Dad, Danielle's voice climbed, that land is worth millions. You're giving it all to him and buying us off with insurance money? I'm keeping the farm a farm, I said, and I'm giving each of you more money than you've ever held at one time. That's not buying you off. That's your mother's wish and my decision. Caleb finally found his voice. Dad, I never asked for this. Why would you? Because you're the only one who never asked, I said, and I turned to look at my two older children. The other two didn't have to ask. They'd already decided. That's when it came out of them. It always does if you wait. This is insane, Danielle snapped on her feet, now the folder sliding off her lap. That farm was supposed to be ours, all of ours. We grew up on it. Caleb he's the one who stayed and played farmer. That doesn't make it his. He's the hired help, Dad. Marcus said it before he could stop himself standing too. We love him, but let's be honest. He works here. That's a job. You don't hand a man the whole estate because he punches a clock. The word dropped into the room like a stone into a well. I watched Caleb's face. He'd been leaning forward, ready to refuse the whole thing, ready to say, give it to them, I don't need it. And then he heard his own brother call him the hired help, and something in him just stopped. His mouth closed, his shoulders came down. He sat back and looked at the two of them like he was seeing strangers wearing familiar faces. The hired help, Caleb repeated soft. Cal, that's not, Marcus started. No, Caleb said. Say it again. I want to make sure I heard it. Nobody said it again. I stood up then, slow because of the knees, but I stood, and the room turned to me. I heard you, I said, both of you, that night on the porch back in September. I came out for your mother's coat, and I heard every word, the lot lines, the road frontage. Once he's gone, and I heard you call your brother the hired help while he was asleep in the next room after 3 nights of calving. Danielle's hand went to her mouth. Marcus sat down like his legs had been cut. I'm not gone yet, I said. I'm right here, and this is still my land. The silence after that was the loudest thing in the house. Danielle was crying now, though I couldn't tell how much was shame and how much was the money slipping through her fingers. Marcus stared at the coffee table like the answer might be printed on it. I didn't raise my voice. That was the whole point. I'd learned that from Ruth. The strongest thing in any room is usually the quietest. I want to be clear about something, I said. I'm not cutting either of you off. You heard Miss Vance. You're each getting a real inheritance. Enough to change your lives if you let it. Marcus, enough to clear whatever hole you've dug. His head jerked up at that. Yes, I knew. Danielle, enough to start over on your own 2 feet, no war required. Then why? Danielle started. Because the land isn't a bank, I said. It's where your mother's buried. It's where your brother has spent 11 years while the two of you visited on holidays and counted the acres. I won't let it be sold. Not by you, not after me. That's the one thing that isn't yours to decide. I looked at both of them, and I made myself say the hardest part gently. You're still my children. I love you. That's exactly why I can't let you do what you were planning. But you are not my executioners. You don't get to divide me up while I'm still breathing. Marcus put his face in his hands. Danielle turned toward the window, jaw tight, tears on her cheeks. Caleb hadn't said a word. He was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Take the inheritance or leave it, I said. That's your choice, but the farm's decided. That one's mine. Ellen let the silence do its work, then closed her folder and spoke to the room. I'll leave copies with each of you, she said. Read them. Have your own lawyers read them if you like. Everything's in order. Nothing here can be undone by argument. She looked at me. I'll see myself out, Theo. When the door shut behind her, it was just the four of us and the ticking clock. Marcus finally lifted his head. His voice came out rough. How much do you know about the debt? Enough, I said. I read the letter in your jacket. I heard your phone call. An asset coming. Land. You were spending my farm to cover it before I was even in the ground. He flinched. It got away from me, Dad. An investment. Then another one to fix the first. It kept getting bigger. I sat back down across from him. Here's what I'll do, I said. Your inheritance from the insurance, you can take part of it now, early, to clear that debt. Ms. Vance can set it up. But it comes out of your share, every dollar, and you tell me the real number. Today. No more hiding. His eyes filled. Why would you do that, after what I... Because you're my son, and you're drowning, I said. And because it's your money, not the farm's. There's a difference. There's always been a difference. That's the whole thing I finally understood. You gave me the number then. It was bad, but it wasn't unsurvivable. Not against what Ruth's old insurance policy had grown into. Danielle still hadn't turned from the window, but she was listening. I could tell by the set of her shoulders. One of them was reachable. I didn't know yet about the other. Caleb walked out during all that, just stood up quiet and went out the back, and I found him 10 minutes later leaning on the pasture fence watching the herd. I came up beside him and put my forearms on the rail the way he was doing. We stood there a while. Cattle don't rush you into talking. I don't want it, he finally said. If it's going to do this to the family, take it back. Split it 3 ways. I'll keep working it either way. I don't need my name on anything. I know you don't, I said. That's exactly why it's yours. He shook his head. That doesn't make sense, Dad. It makes the only sense there is. I looked at him. Marcus and Danielle wanted the land the way you want money in a lottery, as a windfall, something that lands on you. You never wanted it at all. You just showed up every morning for 11 years and did the work whether anyone was watching or not. That's not the hired help, Cal. That's the only kind of owner this ground deserves. His jaw worked. He's not a crier, my youngest, but his eyes were wet at the edges. I stayed for Mom, he said, and then for you. I know, and now the place stays for you. That's how it's supposed to go. I put my hand on his shoulder. Your mother knew it 3 years ago, wrote it on a card. It just took me this long to catch up to her. He turned and looked out at the 200 acres going gold in the afternoon, the oak standing black against the sky, his mother's hill above it all. Okay, he said, barely a whisper. Okay, Dad. That was all, but from Caleb okay is a vow. Danielle left before supper. She came out to the porch where I was sitting, her folder tucked under her arm, keys in her hand. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady, which with Danielle is worse than shouting. You made me the villain in there, she said, in front of everyone. No, I said gently. You wrote that part yourself, on a survey map in red pen. I just read it out loud. Her mouth trembled. For a second I thought she might sit down, might stay, might let the mask come all the way off. Then it hardened again. I hope the farm keeps you warm, she said, and walked to her car. I didn't chase her. That's the thing about a boundary. It only counts if you're willing to let people walk to the other side of it. I'd spent 3 years unable to say no to anyone about anything. I wasn't going to undo it by begging her to stay. Through the screen door, I watched her get in the car. She didn't drive off right away. She sat in the driver's seat with both hands on the wheel, and even from the porch, I could see her shoulders start to shake. She was crying. Not the performance from the front room, the real thing. A 38-year-old woman starting over with nothing, who'd talked herself into believing my land was the lifeboat, and just found out it wasn't, and that her father had seen straight through her. She was wrong in how she went about it, but the fear underneath was real. I could hold both of those things at once. A parent learns how. After a few minutes, she wiped her face and drove away. I didn't know if she'd come back, but I'd left the gate open. The weeks after were quieter than I expected, and quiet was a mercy. Marcus stayed 2 extra days. He sat with Ellen and me and signed the papers to draw his early share against the insurance. Watching him clear that debt was like watching a man come up out of deep water. The panic went out of his face a little more each day. On the last morning, he found me in the barn. I'm ashamed, he said, no excuses this time, of the porch, of the power of attorney, all of it. I know, I said. I don't expect you to trust me again quick. I don't, I said. But you're here, that's a start. I handed him a fence stretcher. You want to be a pletcher, spend a morning on the West Line with your brother. Ground doesn't care about your apology. It cares if you show up. He took the tool. He showed up. Him and Caleb worked the fence in near silence, but they worked it together, and that was more than they'd done in years. Danielle stayed gone, but 3 weeks in, a check cashing confirmation came through Ellen. She'd accepted her inheritance. She hadn't torn it up, hadn't fought it in court. She'd taken the fresh start and gone to build a life somewhere I couldn't see. Caleb ran the farm like he always had, except now his name was on the deed of trust, and I noticed he stood a little straighter, fixing the same fences. The land went on, the corn came up, the herd fattened, the oak kept its watch over the hill. Spring rolled toward summer, and one warm evening I sat on the porch with Ruth's coat still on its hook, and I let myself feel something I hadn't let myself feel in a very long time. Peace. By the next spring, the calves came easy, and Marcus started bringing his kids out on weekends. He'd changed, not all at once, the way people do in stories, but slow, the way people do in life. Cleared his debt, kept his job, started calling on Sundays for no reason, just to talk. He'll never work the land the way Caleb does. But he shows up now, and he lets his boys ride in the tractor, and he doesn't look at the acres and see a number anymore. He looks at them and sees his father's porch. Danielle and I are further apart. She sends a card at Christmas, short, careful. This year she added a line at the bottom. I hope the place is doing well. From her, that's an olive branch the size of a fence post. I wrote back that the door's always open and the coffee's always on. I meant it. I don't know if she'll walk through it. But the gate's unlatched, and that has to be enough for now. I sit on the porch most evenings. Ruth's coat still hangs by the door. I've stopped thinking I need to move it. Some things you keep not because you're stuck, but because they still belong. I lost something the night I heard my kids on this porch, but it wasn't a family. It was a lie I'd been telling myself, that loving your children means letting them decide what you're worth. You can love someone all the way down to the ground and still tell them no. That's not the opposite of love. Some days I think it's the truest kind there is. The farm is safe. The right hands are holding it. And I'm still here to watch it grow. Caleb and I walk up the hill together most Sunday evenings now. It's become a thing without either of us deciding it should be. We stop at Ruth's stone first. He pulls the weeds that creep up around the base the way she'd have wanted, and I just stand and talk to her a while. He never rushes me. He never has. Then we walk down to the oak at the edge of the north field, the tree where I married her 45 years ago, The one Danielle's red pen ran a line straight through. It's still standing. It'll outlast me. Good. It should. Last Sunday, we stood under it as the sun went down. My youngest boy and me, looking back up at the hill and the whole spread laid out gold beneath it. You ever think about what it'll look like in 50 years? He asked. Every day now, I said, and I meant it. For 3 years after Ruth died, I couldn't think past the next chore. Now I think in decades again. That's what having something worth protecting does to a man. It hands him back the future. Your kids will be standing right here, I told him, looking up at this same hill, wondering about the old man who planted the ideas that grew into all of it. He laughed quiet. No pressure. Plenty of pressure, I said. That's what land is. We stood there till the light was almost gone. They planned who'd get the farm once I was gone. They sat on my porch in the dark and divided me up like I was already in the ground. But I was never gone. I was just finally awake. That's where I'll leave you, under the oak, with the light going down. If Theo's story reached you, do one thing for me. Leave a comment and tell me who in your life ever deserved better than they were given. No names, just the truth of it. And if you believe a person's worth isn't something family gets to divide behind their back, hit that like button and subscribe. I've got more stories like this one waiting for you in the description below. Take care of yourself, and don't wait 3 years to do the right thing.